All right. Good morning, everyone. So obviously, I'm not in school today. Unfortunately, my daughter is sick, and so in order to make sure we keep moving forward and we're not staying stagnant on stuff that I know that you guys already know, I figured I would make a video for you today, so that way we can keep things rolling. Um, it's going to be short, and today we're just going to talk about how to write your domain and range when you're given something like what you see here. These are the three representations that we're going to focus on a lot at the beginning here, which is just a set of ordered pairs, a table, and a graph in that order. And I want to make sure that we can break down and make sense of what these are and how to list our domain and range, because it's a very easy thing, but it's also a really easy way to make a mistake. So first things first, that's very important, is that our domain is the set of inputs. Now the set of inputs, really what we mean here is that these are our X values. Now, one thing that's very, very important when you go to actually list this is that you specify what is your domain and what is your range. If you just give me two lists of numbers, I'm going to have no idea what you're talking about. And if you remember from yesterday, range is your set of outputs. Or in our case, that's our Y values. So the very first thing, like when I take a look at this first example problem, before I even start, I'm going to list a D for domain and an R for range. This saves me from making that mistake later on. Now, the way that we list our domain and our range from a function like this is very simple. I start with an open curly brace. That's what I call that thing. And all we do is list our inputs in numerical order. So from least to greatest. Now, luckily I was nice in this one. If you look at your inputs, these are already in numerical order. If these weren't, then I would have to actually write them down in order. But I'm fairly confident that that's something that we can do without issue. Now, range, on the other hand, if I look at all my outputs, these are not in numerical order. But I'm going to list them the same way. I'm going to have the open curly brace. I'm going to find my smallest number here, which I think is -1. And then my next smallest, which is 0. And then 1, and then 4, and 7. It is that straightforward and that simple that all you have to do is list your inputs and your outputs. The biggest places where people make mistakes are one of two things. One, they forget to specify what is the domain and what is the range. And two, they don't write them in numerical order. So those are the two biggest things that people make mistakes on that I don't want you guys to make mistakes on. So, biggest thing to take away from here is that we list these in order. That is the biggest thing. Typically, when something is given to you, it's already in order for your domain, for your X values, but usually not for your range. So that's one thing. Still, when you go to actually turn in a quiz or a test, double check and make sure that that stuff is in order. So that's how I would do it from a set of ordered pairs. From a table, like in this second one, and I picked this table for a very specific purpose, it's even easier because you're already given X and Y as like your table headings. So it gets a lot simpler. But I'm going to do the same thing. Open my curly brace here, and I'm going to list my X values in order, which is as easy as it can get. But I picked this table on purpose because something you probably noticed is that I have the number 9 repeated 3 times. If you have a number that's repeated, you only need to list it once. So in this case, my range just looks like this: -1, 4, 9. You only need to list numbers once. The reason for that is that when I ask for the range, I'm just asking what numbers show up in the output. The fact that 9 shows up 3 times is great, but all I'm asking for are what numbers are there. So if you were looking at your Y column, I would expect to see only negative 1s, 4s, and 9s. And that's exactly what we see. This is another small mistake that people make, is they would write -1, 4, 9, 9, 9. You only need to list it one time. That is it. So I picked this table on purpose to illustrate that fact that if we have repeats, we don't need to list them more than once. Now, lastly, moving on to a graph. I picked just a random graph that I could find here. But one thing I want you to think of here, when we look at our domain, I want us to work from left to right. And when we think about our range, I want us to work from the bottom to the top. Because from a picture, the biggest mistakes that people make is they just always work left to right. So their domain is in order, but their range isn't. So if I take a look here, right, starting all the way on the left, all the way here, this point right here, that's an x value of -7. And then moving on, that's -6, -3. And again, remember, these are x values, not y values. So that one's -1. This one up here is 2. And the very last one over here is 5. So again, the other mistake people make when they identify the coordinate point is they'll end up listing the y value, not the x value. Now, when I start working on my range, I'm going to start down here and work my way up the picture until I find my first point, which happens to be right here. So for my range, I start at -2. And then as I continue to work my way up, I hit a y value of 0. And then over here, I have a y value of 1. And then 5. And then everyone's favorite, 6. And then 7. No matter what, we cannot get away from it. So, as far as your domain and range goes, from a graph, I cannot stress enough this left to right and bottom to top. This is going to be the thing that makes your life easy, because it's going to give you a way to attack every problem that we end up with. Again, some of those big mistakes that people make sure we list stuff in order, make sure it's labeled. That is incredibly important. And make sure if you have repeats, you only list it one time. All I'm asking are what x values show up and what y values show up. If they show up more than once, that's great, but I only need to see it listed one time. So I hope that was helpful. I left a bunch of practice for you guys, and we'll talk more about this when I see you again on Thursday.